Alright, y'all. Let's get into this deck profile because I wanted to talk about Daimaku. Gonna be going over many deck profiles, not just this one. But I wanted to go over probably the best red leader in the game currently for different reasons. But it's also based on how the game is played, how the meta is going, matchups, that kind of stuff. So we're gonna get to this deck because there's differences from this deck, this leader, compared to the starter deck Daimaku leader, because the other one, he can buff any battle card 5k and make something 5k, which is actually still useful and really good in a bunch of matchups across the board. And this leader can only buff your DA cards, so it's a little bit good and bad depending on the situation. But I do think this leader in this deck is actually really good for many different reasons. So why do we play this deck? Of course we play it for Glorio. It's a 35k dual attack that can neg your leader 5k. If you're not playing Glorio, you're bad. There's no reason to play this leader if you're not going to put Glorio in the deck. So you got to play this at a 4-0. Have to. The point of this deck is literally just attack, attack, attack. String your opponent as many times as you can. Pretty much, you can have big hand sizes. I've had hand sizes almost as big as 15 cards plus, because you have cards like Pansy. You can take a life, and if she dies by getting KO'd, you draw 2 cards. A lot of times your opponent has to kill this card, or it's a lot of pressure just coming back and forth. Now, we are playing Fusion World, so of course there's ways to bottom deck this card, remove it. My favorite play is like playing a 4-drop Baby Ape and swinging to remove it because it's 0 combo power. So you literally gain a big advantage off of that. But for the most part, sometimes you have to attack into this card and kill it, and your opponent draws 2 cards, which is really good if you're Daimaku. Because Pansy, you can literally drop it on turn 1. If you have the energy marker, just pop it. There is no downside to popping an energy marker in this deck because you don't really care 100% to go into this SCR on turn 6 automatically or turn 5. Your whole game is attack, 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 putting pressure, drawing a bunch of cards, attacking back, and that's it. This deck isn't really, I don't want to call it brain dead, but use a couple plays you have to be smart with, a couple things you can change. So for example, I like running searchers in decks that are aggro, only because I want to see my pieces. If you're playing an aggro deck, you're trying to win in a few turns, you should be able to want to search out pieces that you're going to need, because you can't just hope you draw into them. That's not a great game plan. So the best way to do it is search out pieces, find out what you can get in your top 5. Yes, you might bottom deck some stuff, but you get to search for whatever you need, and that's much more consistent in my opinion. And a lot of players don't like searchers. They bottom deck a lot of great cards. It's like, but do you not realize in this game, that's a lot of knowledge. Seeing the top 5, even if you bottom deck those cards, it makes you decide things differently based on like, hey, now I know where these cards are. Unlike being blind completely. So draw ones are good, but this guy is still good. We run the cantrip. We have to run the DA cantrip. Now, because of the leader's ability, you can buff him up 10. You can literally swing for game with a 1-drop because you buff him up 10k, and then you can combo away and win the game that way as well. So you can buff this guy up, you can buff this guy up. Easy. Of course, you get into your other parts of the game. This card, pretty soon to release, or at least about to when I release this video. It's a great card. A lot of things that this deck doesn't have is a good protection for your board when you actually need it. So you can literally drop this guy, take a life, still be able to buff him, and then if your leader's awakened, you can choose one of your battle cards and they don't die by KO skills at least. So if you need a little bit of protection, if you need a little bit of stuff that can help you out against certain decks, this guy's really good. Most of your attackers will always get the buff and become 30k swings, or Glorio 35k swings, which is really, really good. So great attacker, great guy that takes life, because you're going to be taking a lot of life quick and early. Say another guy who takes life early. This guy is still really good. A 2-drop that takes a life mandatory, becomes a 30k beater by himself when you're awakened, then you puff him up to 40. It's really strong. This card is still really good. It should still be played mandatory in this deck because you can literally self-awaken. You can have 2 of these guys, have 2 30ks, buff 1 to maybe 40, have your leader swing. That's a lot of pressure your opponent can't really do much about. This Vegeta is just like the Gohan. I still think it's pretty good. I'm running at 4 because he's searchable, he's a 10k combo, and he makes something 15. So then you have another guy you can buff at 30. So really good removal, negging abilities, or attacking in the bodies, whatever it's going to be. I still think you should run your crit guys. You're playing a aggro deck. Still want to take life, you still want to crit your opponent, still want to put pressure on them. Still want to play your Gohan, still a great staple in all red decks because he gets to take a life and next something 15. Then when you're awakened, he's a 25k attacker. That is really, really good still in a meta where you have Zamasu existing or other decks that you want to put a little bit of pressure on them. So really good card, and of course your one of Kefla. It can go into any of those 2 cards we just seen. Drop her, do what you have to do, draw a card, play a guy, lots of pressure on your opponent. Still great combination to have these 3 cards here. Super combo choice doesn't matter, but if you're playing a DA deck, you might as well have a DA super combo. Still a great card. I want to buff it up to 3. This, on top of the pressure you're already putting with the 30k swings, you have this Vegeta that can KO parts of the board, and then he's swinging for 50k, and he doesn't die next turn. That is really good. Swinging for a 50k swing, putting more pressure on your opponent, and the reason why is even better because sometimes you have a big hand, and you can literally neg your hand so you can get his ability, and you're straight. Discarding 2 doesn't hurt you because you're putting so much pressure on your opponent, they're being overwhelmed. This card has gotten even better, and it's nice that it gave him an alternate art version of this card as well. Double striker choice now has to be the DA. Everyone questioned, why would I play this one over the other one? Now we can have a 45k double striker swinging at your face. Same power as Broly, a draw Broly, and his ability is still nice. It's pretty cool. You can KO something if they're 20k power or less, but you're really using them for the 45k double strike. It's nice to have that good one of drop them down, swing for game, and pretty much obliterate your opponent. And then, oops, we run the new adventure card. Since you want to keep pressuring your opponent, you can literally, when you're awakened, drop this for free, give a battle card plus 15 for the battle, and just keep putting pressure on your opponent. I do like cards like this because it allows you to put pressure without wasting too much cards in your hand to do it. So plus 15 is essentially 2 cards for 0 and 1 card. That is actually really good value in my opinion. And if you drop in a Glorio or other things that's necessary, that wouldn't, you know, depending on the situation, having a Glorio become 50k is absurd in some ways. You know, like you want to have things like this so you can pressure your opponent because it's really strong. You know, negging your opponent's leader 5k and then dropping these guys, really strong. And then of course the last card is your SCR. There is times in this deck where you're putting so much pressure, hitting your opponent, doing all these things, but if you can run out of gas, this deck can still run out of gas. There's good players that can work around what you're doing, and if you run out of options, this is still your get out of jail free card. You drop the SCR, he says, nope, you're not hitting me, I'm getting a free shield, I'm gonna neg your whole board 20k. It can literally save you games because you literally just stopped your opponent in his tracks, blew up their board, and then you can swing with this guy for big games. So I think 2 is fine. I don't see yourself running 3 or 4 like we did last set. But it's the card that comes out when you're like, hey, I am about to die. I need some protection. I need to also put 40k plus pressure on my opponent. So, great card, still a great thing. And like I said, this deck is really strong. You can sweep your opponent under the rug quick, but you gotta be sure, like I said, positives is you have great cards that can put pressure. You have a lot of good 10k combos here and there. You have ways to draw, neg your opponent, but you also gotta be careful that your board can get blown up, and you need to save your SCR. Don't charge your SCR if you don't have to, but be careful what you do. Keep attacking your opponent. You might even have to worry about board half the time, and then you win. Like, that's something you can really say. But try the deck out. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next one.